this 13-year injustice, this attempt to criminalise journalism, this attempt to discourage and intimidate journalism worldwide when it comes to reporting on America and its criminal behaviour when it invades another country, which it does every year. I think it's actually more than one a year in the last 270 odd years. The term warmonger is probably the best description of America. Its economy is largely based on the military-industrial complex. If peace broke out tomorrow, they'd go broke.
Vassal, in some extent, to the United States empire. Yeah. You know, they've interfered with our government multiple times. Yeah. The Whitlam dismissal, we look into that. The United States had stuff in that.
Hi, folks. Julian Assange lodged an appeal against his extradition from the UK to the US. Last year, sometime, about 11 months ago. And it took, that appeal was to the High Court in the United Kingdom, is a document. I've got a printout of the document. It's a 150-page grounds for appeal. I'd like to read you the introduction, because I probably don't have time to read out the 150 pages. There's a very good video online by Consortium News, Cathy Vogan speaking to Emmy
Butlin.
They dissect this document and they talk about the fact that it took 10 months for a High Court judge to decide that they won't hear Julian's appeal. And the finding was a 3-page finding. An answer to a 150-page appeal took 10 months to produce a 3-page finding, which, by the way, was full of errors, which indicates that the judge did not even read this document, did not go to the trouble in the 10 months that the judge held this document to read it. Anyway, here I go with the introduction to that 150-page document. Julian Assange and WikiLeaks were responsible for the exposure of criminality on the part of the US government on a massive and unprecedented scale. The publication in 2010 and 2011 of materials sent by a serving military officer, Private Manning, sit at the very apex of public interest disclosures. By publishing this material, quote, WikiLeaks exposed outrageous, even murderous wrongdoing, including war crimes, torture, and atrocities on civilians. Julian Assange's work, dedicated to ensuring public accountability by exposing global human rights abuses and facilitating the investigation and the prosecution for state criminality has contributed to the saving of countless lives, stopped human rights abuses in their tracks, and brought down despotic and autocratic regimes. Those who expose grave state criminality, defenders of fundamental human rights, are and always have been vulnerable to acts of political retaliation and persecution from the regimes whose criminality they expose. Julian Assange is no exception. The law is fiercely protective of human rights defenders. Exposure of state criminality is, in law, a protected political act, the product of a political opinion. Prosecutions on account of such acts are straightforwardly prohibited by Section 81 of the 2003 Extradition Act. That's in Great Britain, of course. The history of this prosecution between Mr. Assange's exposures in 2010 and 2011 and the indictment in 2018 is a textbook example of political persecution. The course of this case since 2011 is simply extraordinary. It involves inter alia US government plots to interfere with judges who investigate the matters Mr. Assange exposed, to silence the International Criminal Court who have taken up Mr. Assange's disclosures, and to kidnap and rendition Mr. Assange himself, or else murder him. What follows below is conduct of the type one would normally expect from a military dictatorship. The district judge failed to act upon or even address these issues from the perspective of Section 81 because, despite having the law drawn squarely and repeatedly to her attention, she failed to recognise or acknowledge that exposure of state criminality is, in law, a protected political act, engaging Section 81. The evidence in this case has moreover developed since the district judge's decision in January 2021. Investigations in America now provide a fuller picture of the US state-level plans to kidnap, rendition and murder Mr. Assange. They also reveal that the initiation of criminal proceedings in this case by a criminal complaint in December 17 resulted after obstacles, some reported as having been erected by the UK, to those criminal plans. The prosecution that the US were forced to resort to instead, commenced in 2018, is no less extraordinary. A, it is unprecedented in law. B, it cuts clean across established principles of free speech. C, to deal with that, it anticipates a trial at which Mr. Assange, as a foreigner, can be denied reliance on the First Amendment D. Indeed, a trial out with or outside protections of the US Constitution altogether. E. Is accompanied by exposure to a grossly disproportionate sentence. In short, the circumstances of the prosecution are so stark and unusual that they engage bars to the extradition in their own right. As to the circumstances of the ensuing extradition request, F. It violates the prohibition on extradition for political offences expressly provided for in the relevant treaty and under international law. G. It deliberately misstates the core facts. The district judge took these issues one by one and reasoned that none offended the 2003 Extradition Act. For reasons which follow, she is plainly wrong in multiple respects. But even if she were right on each of these issues, when viewed separately, the district judge then needed, but failed entirely, to stand back and examine what they cumulatively told her about the political origins of this case. They were all, in short, individually and cumulatively, the clearest evidence of a prosecution mounted on account of Mr. Assange's political opinions, namely his stated and proven commitment to the exposure of US state-level criminality. Thank you. That's the introduction to the 150-page appeal that was lodged last year, that was answered by the judge with a 3-page finding which had factual errors that indicated that he had not even read this document. Thank you.
Julian Assange.
Welcome. To the 189th week of Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gatherings. The narratives of free-thinking people are different to the narratives of the mainstream media. Mainstream media narratives are about persuading people into conformity with the fiction that we live in a free, democratic society. Anyone who doesn't maintain that fiction is treated with contempt. People who publish evidence which contradicts the mainstream fiction are demonized and persecuted. Those with the ability to wake up large numbers of people about the corruption of democracy can expect to be vilified and tortured. This is what has been done to Julian Assange for 13 years. We cannot allow this to continue. We must speak up for the narrative that will free Julian Assange. A people's narrative is about our freedom and the public interest. A people's narrative is that it is important for us to unite and free Julian Assange because his freedom is our freedom. Political persecution is evidence that democracy has been corrupted. Whenever political persecution takes place, democratically minded people must stand in solidarity with the one who is being persecuted. Our narrative is that we must all stand with Julian Assange. Public interest information will always be labelled as wrong by those who have corrupted democracy. It will always be necessary for people to express themselves through their human right of freedom of speech. Julian Assange exercised his human right of freedom of speech by publishing evidence in the public interest. His imprisonment is a crime against all of us. Our narrative is that we must stand up and fight to free Julian Assange. In every situation we have a choice. If you wish to express a choice, you can help us make governments and corporations accountable to the people by helping to free Julian Assange. This is our narrative. This is our freedom of speech. These are our human rights. So we must free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Thank you.
Hello. I'm just walking past this protest for Julian Assange. My name's Damien Sawyers. I'm an artist based in Sydney, and a lot of my friends support our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. And I think Anthony Albanese is a hoax. Anthony Albanese is a hoax. He supports the corporations, he supports the banks, he does not support the Australian citizens. Julian Assange is an Australian citizen. He was born in Australia. He's detained in another country. He's been detained for years with no real charges except for spreading the truth. This man has done nothing to spread the truth, and Anthony Albanese has done fucking nothing to bring him back home to Australia where he belongs. Julian Assange needs to be brought back to Australia. He needs to be allowed to speak about the truth, and we are living in a corrupt world. A lot of my friends in the inner city think Anthony Albanese is a saviour. He's come along with some insight and he's going to help the Australian people. Well, Julian Assange is an Australian person and Anthony Albanese is not helping him. Anthony Albanese is not helping Australians. Julian Assange is Australian. And where is he? He's in prison in another country for a crime that hasn't been proven. So, you know, all you support for Anthony Albanese, go and tell him what a prick he is, because bring Julian home. Julian does not deserve to be incarcerated. He hasn't done nothing wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if anybody would like to come and say anything or say something about the injustice that's happening to Julian, or wish Julian a happy birthday. He had his 52nd birthday the other day. It was his 5th birthday locked up in maximum security, solitary confinement lockdown as an innocent man. Altogether, he's been arbitrarily detained for 13 years since December 2010. So he's been in jail, or incarcerated, I should say, for 13 years. So I forget how many birthdays, probably 13 birthdays he's had without his freedom. He's a man with commitment. I heard him described as a man with an unbreakable backbone. This man is truly a defiant individual. The persecution that he suffered, the torture, the long hours of incarceration, the solitary confinement, the lack of medical attention, the lack of dental care, the abuses. He's basically been a non-person for 13 years. He's been a cancelled person. People talk about our cancel culture. Julian's rights as a human being have been cancelled for 13 years. And he is an innocent man. And under the Westminster legal system, we are supposed to remain innocent until a jury of 12 of our peers finds beyond reasonable doubt that we have committed a crime. Because as Julian has pointed out, we can only build a good society upon the foundation of truth. A society that is built on lies is doomed for failure, is doomed to collapse. And that is what is happening to our society. It is slowly but surely collapsing under the weight of lies, lies and more lies. And those lies are no more evident or demonstrable than the lies that have been told about Julian Assange. We look forward to the pressure mounting on the Americans to drop the charges. Thank you, sir. Now we've got a very special occasion coming up. This Tuesday, the 11th of July, is our office manager's birthday. Joseph's birthday is on Tuesday. Now we're going to have an enormous birthday party for him in Centennial Park, which he refuses to attend. So Diane's decided that he's a captive audience here at Town Hall, and we're getting a cardboard cutout, but we've got the real So I'd like a quick round of happy birthday for Joseph. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday dear Joseph. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Oh, he's a jolly good fellow. Okay, come blow the candles out.
He's a jolly good fellow, and so say all of us. So say all of us, and so say all of us. For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, and so say all of us.
Okay, come and blow the candles out.
I will thank you, I appreciate the kind thoughts.
Hey! You gotta cut the cake.
It's for Tuesday. His birthday, the 11th. Okay. You want it first? There we go. You'll be next.
And what, film? You want to be filmed?
Photo with Tony in it.
Okay. This is yours.
He's here.
Oh, he's here.
Okay, here we are. Fists in the air.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
We are all Assange.